Hello and welcome to Ewe Sew You. My name's Zoe and this is my channel all about the crafty bits and pieces I get up to. I knit, I sew, I spin on a drop spindle, I dabble in weaving from time to time, and anything else that takes my crafty fancy. But today we're talking Tunisian crochet, so grab a brew, put your feet up and let's get started. Welcome back to any returning viewers, and to any new viewers a very warm welcome to you. As I mentioned in the opening to this video, we're talking about Tunisian crochet today, which is a specific style of crochet. It's a little bit like knitting and crochet had a love child. So it's a very interesting technique. It takes a little bit longer in my opinion than standard crochet, or at least the crochet that I was more familiar with before I came across it, and I'll show you why in just a moment. To give you an idea of what it looks like, I've worked these shorty socks with a Tunisian crocheted heel. This is using the stitch that I'm going to show you today. It's called the simple stitch. So as it sounds, it's like the building blocks, basics of a lot of Tunisian crochet. So I'll give you the idea of how the stitches are structured, and it creates a very interesting texture. One of the pluses of Tunisian crochet is there is a stitch called the Tunisian knit stitch. So it's a crochet stitch that looks like knitting, so there's a lot of versatility there. So yes, there are lots of things you can do, but we're going to focus on the simple stitch today. I will hopefully get around to doing some more videos on some of the other stitches at some point, as and when they come up in the projects that I'm working. To work with Tunisian crochet, you obviously need yarn and you need a Tunisian crochet hook. If you're using a small stitch count, you can get away with the standard cheap, no fancy handles crochet hooks, the ones that are the same diameter all the way from the shaft to the tip of the handle. But this is one of my Tunisian crochet hooks. I got a bundle of these off of that online retailer that sells everything under the sun, and it's about the length of a straight knitting needle. You can get them with cords on the end, which I will hopefully at some point in the future pick up, because that way you can put a longer cord on, you can do a higher stitch count. I'm obviously constrained a bit as to the size of the projects I can work because of the length of my hook. That being said, you can fill the whole hook up, you can make squares, you can make strips, same as you would with the knitting on straight needles. So you've got the hook at one end, and then yeah, it's basically a knitting needle with a hook on the end. This one is a 5mm hook, and I'm going to be using some worsted weight yarn to demonstrate the simple stitch for you. So I will flip the camera around and we'll have a look at how it's put together. Okay, let's take a closer look at these Tunisian crochet heels. So you can see that there are these little lines coming up over the cross of each row of yarn, and on the inside we've got a nice swishy load of what kind of looks like extra dense pearl bumps. So it's quite a dense fabric, so it is quite a nice strong heel, this one. I'm not going to specifically show you how to do this as a heel at this time, because I didn't come up with this concept, but I will show you the stitch that's involved. And so it's called the simple stitch, and it's made with 2 passes, so you work always on the right side and you work all the way across one way and then all the way back. So a bit like brioche in knitting has 2 passes, Tunisian crochet has 2 passes as well. Okay, so I've got my yarn and I've got my hook, my Tunisian hook. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to work a crochet chain the same as you would for any other form of crochet. So I'm going to start by creating a slip knot, which I do by simply wrapping the yarn around my fingers, and I put the hook under the first, over the second, and pull it through. I do the same with the knitting needle if I'm doing a slip knot to start with as well. So then we're going to chain, let's chain 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as if you can't count to 10, 7, 8, 9 and 10. So that's our foundation crochet chain. So far so normal. Next we're going to work all the way along the chain in our first pass, so we're going to work 10. So I tend to put my hook in underneath that back bump, but you know, put it in wherever you normally do. We're just going to pull the yarn through and leave it on the hook all the way along. Doesn't matter how you hold your hook particularly, there are a couple of kind of so-called official ways to do it. I hold mine over the top like a knife. My stepmother holds hers like a pencil, but as long as it's comfortable and it's in control, you're fine. And obviously use your dominant hand to do it. Just work my way all along this chain until I've got all of my hook loops on the needle. This is why you, for a larger stitch count, need the longer needle or the one with the cord on the end. For small stitch counts you can, as I say, use a standard ordinary crochet hook. You can get interchangeable sets of Tunisian crochet hooks with the cords, like with an interchangeable knitting set. So you just change the size of the tip to whatever you need for your project. So that is probably what I will go for eventually. I don't do enough Tunisian crochet to warrant the expense of it at the moment, but yeah, one day when money's no object. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. Okay, I have 11. I'll have a little edge scratch and a calculation later and work out how I've managed to have 11. I know how I've managed to have 11. I did 10 foundation chains plus the loop that was already on the hook from the slip knot. Okay, so 11. So that's our first pass done. Now to come back, the first stitch you do differently to the rest of them. So for the second pass, you're going to put the hook under the yarn and put it through one of the loops that's on the hook. Just the one to begin with. The next time you're going to come through 2. And all the way along to the beginning, you're going to pull the yarn through 2 loops that are on the needle until you get back to the beginning. So you'll be left with 1 loop on your needle at the beginning of the row. And that's your first row of Tunisian crochet simple stitch. Now if you look at the structure of the stitch, you can see these bits sticking up between the bottom and the top of the stitch. That's the bit that we're going to go under to do our next row. So we put our hook under that vertical bar and pull the yarn through. You can hear my hook hitting against the table a little bit as I work. Obviously if I was doing a normal project I wouldn't be sat on a table. This is just for the purposes of filming, because obviously that would get annoying. It may not be so bad with the ones with the cord on because they're flexible. I don't know, I haven't tried. So yeah, underneath all of these bars all the way along. Till you get to the last stitch where you'll see the bar for the last stitch is right on the edge of the work. Okay, so we should now have 11 loops back on the needle. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. And again we're going to do our second pass in the same way. So through 1 and then through 2. All the way back to the beginning. So there we have our second row. So I'll work a few more rows of this and I'll come back and show you what it's like when it's a few rows tall. Okay, so here is our tiny swatch of Tunisian crochet. As you can see, it likes to curl up. It behaves a little bit like stocking stitch and knitting from that perspective. So you would want to be putting a border around it, or like with the socks, incorporating it into another project so it's got things on all four sides to hold it flat. Stocking stitch tends to curl at the seams on the sides as well as the top and the bottom. Simple stitch with Tunisian crochet, it tends to just be the top and the bottom that curl. But you can see the density of the stitch, and it's really quite interesting little texture that you get. In the yarn I used for the socks, it reminds me of those rag rugs that are stitched together. But, see a little bit less in the plain colour. But that's Tunisian simple stitch. It's sometimes just referred to as the Afghan stitch or the Tunisian stitch, but usually I see it referred to as the simple stitch. And like I say, there are lots of other stitches in Tunisian crochet, so as and when I work a project using one of those, I will show you those as well. So I hope you found that useful and interesting. I personally came across Tunisian crochet as somebody who knits and crochets, so it was a nice marriage of the two techniques, where obviously standard crochet you're working on one stitch at a time, knitting and working on rows. Tunisian crochet combines the two. So if you're a crocheter who doesn't knit and you want a knit type fabric, or if you're a knitter who doesn't crochet and you want a crochet type fabric, this might be the option for you, because it is that blend. So if you haven't quite got to grips with the crochet techniques, because the Tunisian crochet uses more like a knitting needle, it may work better for knitters that don't crochet. And if you're a crocheter who wants something that's in a knit type fabric, there is a stitch that looks like a knit stitch. So I will make a point of sorting out a project to do at some point in the next few months, probably looking at my list of things that I've got to do in the next few weeks, of a Tunisian crochet project that uses the knit stitch, and when I'm doing that I'll show you how it's worked. So it does give crocheters an option to create a knit type fabric if they can't get to grips with the knitting, or they haven't had a chance to get to grips with knitting. The Tunisian crochet might be quicker to pick up because there's that crossover, that similarity in technique. Okay, so that's all I have for you this week. Next week will be our roundup of what I've been working on in April, so I look forward to seeing you in that video. And obviously, if you've liked spending some time with me today, click the like button down below and subscribe and ding the bell and all that good stuff. And let me know if you want to try Tunisian crochet down below. Is it something you've come across before? Is it something you've had a go at? Is it completely new to you? Does it look like complete witchcraft? So yeah, have a little chat down there, and I will see you next week. But in the meantime, happy crafting and bye bye for now.